Well, hi there, it's me, Penny. Welcome back to my practice room for this tutorial devoted to Sinfonia number 11 in G minor by J.S. Bach. This is BWV 797 and it's a three-voiced piece, early advanced level. You know, I've been thinking a lot lately about musical experiences and how when I play Bach's music, I'm giving myself, hopefully, I'm trying, for a very profound and meaningful experience. How do I show that at the piano? What is a meaningful experience? Well, what I came up with was this little jewelry box. It was given to me by a very precious family member. It's hand painted, it's got some flowers. I'll show you a close up. I love it. I keep it upstairs in my bedroom. And inside this little jewelry box, it's made out of wood, I keep some very precious little souvenirs, little treasures, right? I have a charm bracelet that was a relative's. I have a little bell, which I won't tell you the symbolism of that, but it's very precious to me. It's just a cheap little bell with a ribbon. I have my Steinway pin from when I worked at Steinway, and I have a ring that my grandfather made me. He used to do lapidary. Think about what you have at home that you keep in a special place. Now, relate that, just be patient with me here, hear me out. The opposite of the little precious jewelry box would be something like this enormous Rubbermaid bin. All right, this thing is sturdy and solid. And what have I got in here? I've got an iron, got a couple boxes of Kleenex, and I got some spare bath towels. Not very exciting. When I open this lid, I'm thinking practical. I'm thinking chores. I'm thinking I gotta clean. Or maybe I'm moving house and need to have things in a sturdy place before they go on the truck. This is not going on the truck. And when I open it and I sort through its contents, I'm having an intimate experience. A meaningful, enchanting little experience. So that is my little springboard for a mindset of how to approach the music you play. If we're going to give our pieces expression and find something unique and new in them, we have to have the right mindset. So if you're at your piano or your keyboard and you're pulling your hair out because you want to play this music like the pros, like the great pianists of yesteryear or those of today perhaps, and it's just not coming and you're losing patience and you're frustrated, perhaps there's just a little switch in the mind that needs to be flicked, that you're looking at the music with the right mindset. If you're viewing this music in a black and white sort of way, like there's a right way and a wrong way to play it, and I just got to play all these notes at the right time, darn it, then your interpretation could be heading towards the Rubbermaid bin. Maybe it's because I'm left-handed, among other things, I suppose. My analogies perhaps are a little bit off the beaten path, shall we say. But this is so important to me, to have an experience at the piano. And whether you struggle with the notes and the rhythms or not, we can all afford, I think it's safe to say, to have a little bit better mindset at the piano. We need to believe that it's not the music that owes us an experience. We owe the music an experience. Okay, so what I want to show you now is an overhead view of my hands. As well, I have the camera, an additional camera on my foot. I want you to see this overhead because what I'm doing in this run through at a very slow tempo is that I'm taking time. This is not a steady performance that you're about to hear. I'm not concerned with tempo, stability. There's much space that I'm adding between the notes. This is a way that I've practiced, and you'll see the sheet music. I've color-coded the voices, so the soprano is in red, the alto, our middle voice, is in yellow, and the bottom, our bass, is in blue. So try to follow the colors horizontally as individual lines, because this is polyphonic music, and try to hear the space between the notes. And where I am adding that space, those are places where I am hearing something juicy in the counterpoint, and perhaps a delicious dissonance. And also, I would like you to notice the degree to which I'm approaching many of the notes, especially the long notes, from above the key. That's something that I do to achieve a warmth of tone and adding that extra space to listen. And all of this is a byproduct of having practiced by separating each of the three voices many times, in the hopes of giving, if not the listener, then at least myself, a meaningful, enchanting experience at the piano. I think I owe it to Bach. Okay, so here's the overhead view. Okay, we're back. And before I share a few practice tips, I just want to share some data that I uncovered about this piece, things that interest me. Number one, this Sinfonia number 11 is the longest of the sinfonias. It's 72 bars in length. That's more than 3 times the length of the shortest Sinfonia, which is number 1, and it's only 21 bars in length. The sinfonias, the vast majority of them, 60%, that's 9 out of 15, begin with a rest. We saw this in the inventions in the previous tutorial for invention number 13 in A minor, and it was 67% of the inventions begin with a rest. So that is interesting to me, and I love these pieces that start with a rest. It seems to imply motion already at play before the piece gets going. As I was practicing, I wondered to myself, could one of the voices have more 16th notes than the other? And so I counted, and indeed, the soprano has the most 16th notes, and by quite a bit. It has 143 16th notes. The bass is next with 83 16th notes, and the alto has the least with 52. That's quite a discrepancy. So, take note. I would have thought that the alto might have the second most number of 16th notes, but no, it's the bass. Also of note, because as I said, this piece begins with a rest, and therefore many of the entries of the subject begin with a rest as well throughout the piece. And so I thought, I wonder if there's a voice that has fewer rests than the other. In other words, is there a voice that has the most notes actually sounding on a downbeat? So I counted that. It's the bass that has the most number of notes that sound on the downbeat. So out of 72 bars, the bass is playing on the downbeat for 53 of those bars. The soprano is next. 42 out of 72 bars feature the soprano actually playing on a downbeat and not being tied over from the previous bar. And the alto has the least number of this, 34 out of 72 bars. I explored that because one of the things I love most about this piece are the rests and the ties, because it just creates such roundedness. This triple meter contributes to that as well, but this roundedness and the ties and the suspensions across the bar line, they just kind of pull you back and forth, and this interplay of that. And so it was interesting to me to see the breakdown there, and the fact that the bass voice has the most number of notes playing on the downbeat, I think has to do with just the fact that the bass gives so much ground to our ear, like the ground under our feet. And when we don't hear the bass on a downbeat, the ear notices it, right? More than if the alto is not playing on the downbeat. So that was interesting to me, and it just makes me think about some decisions Bach made. So that's the data part. I always like to have a little bit of data for everything that I play. What I want to do now for you, and this is something that you really can benefit from in all of the pieces that you work on by Bach, especially the inventions, sinfonias, and fugues, and that is to isolate each voice, play it by itself many times over and over again, singing along at different tempi, and then when you really feel like you know those voices, mix and match, right? So maybe you play the soprano and the alto, then you play the alto and the bass, and then the bass and the soprano. On and on it goes, right? You heard in the overhead performance there quite a slow, spacious run through, and I was listening for these dissonances and trying to do a lot of finger pedal and approach from above to get a good tone and all this. I do that in conjunction with practice that is at a quite adventurous clip. Try not to practice only at one tempo or within a modest little pocket range of tempi. Try practicing things at a snail's pace, like a really, really slow snail. And then very quick, and then everywhere in the middle. Because if you only practice in a general tempo range, a limited tempo range, you're not really going to, at least I think, it would be hard to get a sense of how much you need to move for the various passages. And when you speed something up, even if it's just one voice and you play it much faster than you're intending to play the piece, it does force you to think and plan sooner and redistribute your weight in different bursts of time. The adjustments are altered when we do these pieces at different speeds. So consider a healthy range of tempo when you're practicing. Okay? And that's what I'm going to do for you now. And when you're isolating the voices, you don't need to worry about maintaining the same fingering that you would when you play the piece hands together. I'm going to play each of the three voices by themselves for you, but I'm going to use whatever fingering feels good and allows me to hear and shape those voices. So let's start with the top, our soprano, that's the red voice. And forgive me for my conducting and singing. I can't help it. It helps me to feel like I have ultimate control over the music, and I also really enjoy it. And so it's like when you're happy to see someone that you haven't seen in a long time. You can't help but smile and want to run to them and give them a hug, right? You can't. Sometimes you just can't hold back your emotions. Okay, so here we go. Soprano at a bit of a clip. And I'm just this triple meter and the rest at the beginning of many of these entries is just creating such circular rounded gestures in my mind for when I'm listening to and in my movements at the piano. The nice thing too about playing it at quite a clip like this is that we notice the long notes more than when we're playing them really slowly and it's just like so slow, right? But at this tempo, we notice the dotted quarters like these. And we get those throughout the piece in various voices. And I'm trying to give those laser beam intensity of tone with really good warmth and sweetness. I don't want harshness here. Let's call out the alto. Here I am. And away we go. This is the yellow on your page, okay? Middle voice. I feel like I've been flying in the sky when I play these voices. Just where else would you fly, right? But I feel like I'm flying. Oh, it's just wonderful. And when you sing, you know, you can tell I'm not a trained singer, and there's not good breath support or anything going on here, but I'm feeling it, and I'm trying to match the pitch as best I can. And the value in singing, apart from helping to reinforce what the voices are doing in your ear, is that it gets you breathing, and hopefully breathing in strategic places and not in the middle of a sea of 16th notes. Bass, here we go. Right? Ah, and I think my favorite has to be the alto. Oftentimes it is. But the alto, as we saw earlier in the data, right? The alto was the one that has the most number of missing notes on a downbeat. So those ties being held over, and places like 24 for the next few bars. This, it's creating like little musical spirals, little curly cues. Speaking of curly cues, I'm getting excited here, my goodness. The subject of this piece, that, is a little bit curly cue-esque as well. It's just a broken G minor chord. But you notice Bach goes down and then up. And combined with that rest on the front of the bar, it to me, it creates like a curly cue image. This kind of thing. Now he could have went. Now what would that have sounded like? Let me play the first few bars of that. Right? As opposed to what's written. It just gives you a sense that you're not just taking point A to point B. Take the easy route. But there's so many twists and turns, and it makes for a really adventuresome voyage for the ear, right? And it does that all over the place. So that was another thing that I thought was interesting. And I've marked a number of these things on the score for you: entries of the subject, points of arrival, things like that. But I want to make a point about the middle voice here, which has to, at least for me, has to be occasionally split up between the hands. And I've indicated those places, excuse me, with a downward letter U, horseshoe kind of thing. In measure 2, for instance, the D of the alto part, I'm grabbing that with my left hand. Because it would be too clumsy to play it all with the right hand. So there's, you can see there's a number of places where I'm splitting up the alto between the hands. And this is something I do a lot in all of Bach's music. Make it easy for yourself as best you can and split it up as needed. I have to apologize. My voice is getting a little scratchy because I filmed this earlier and discovered it was out of focus. So this is second time around the track. I want to point out as well, from a technical standpoint, that I'm doing a lot of this kind of circular motion, like a sphere. The right hand, if I do it head on, da-dee-dum, bum, ba-da-dum, bum. So I've got my right hand going in a kind of a counterclockwise sphere with the arm, which just means the arm is moving away from the body, and the left hand is more this kind of thing. I've talked about that in a video. It's the one with the thumbnail with the big arrows on my back going like that, right? So there's a lot of this kind of movement. You saw it in the overhead, to help project these things and to compensate for the short fingers, thumb and fifth finger. Some trills. As always, you want to approach the trill from above. The one in measure 9 is particularly tricky. It's in the soprano. Because what I'm doing there, I'm trilling with 4-2 for a few rotations and then switching to 4-1. And you notice the G in that bar of the alto, this is measure 9, the G, I'm grabbing that with my left-hand thumb, that note there. But as soon, that G is tied into the next bar. So as soon as I finish my little trill, I'm doing, which I'm ending on my thumb, I'm then quickly, very quickly substituting to 4 so that I can then take finger 2 and catch or relieve the thumb of my left hand on that G so that the left hand can get down there and play the next bar. So that is a tricky thing. Slow practice will win the race there for you. There's another trill in 24, and then a few bars later, 20, is it 28? Just doing 2 rotations there. So approach from above with this kind of like toss of the hand and curved fingers. Whenever you're trilling, curved fingers work best, I find. The left hand, when I was playing the left hand, and we said earlier that the left hand, let's see, the bass has 83 16th notes. So it's second place there. And but it does have a sudden outburst. Many of those 16th notes come from the passage at 36 to 40, this business. And I mean, that is kind of out of nowhere, right? What was the left hand doing mostly before that? Long, short, and then occasionally the subject here and there, but mostly just eighth notes. But this sudden non-stop 16th notes for 5 bars is really something else. It's kind of shocking to me. I think this is the middle of the piece, I would say. And he takes us from this low D all the way up to this B flat above middle C. And that little, the last 3 notes of those bars and the first bar of the next one are, I find, nice little, like, places for the ear to latch on. It's a nice little motive, right? If I play, this is at 36. Right? It's a nice little melodic motive. And I think if we can, as I was talking about last week in the tutorial for the A minor invention, if we can find these little melodic motives within a sea of many notes, it helps the playing to take shape and texture and minimize the notey typewriter clack 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 kind of effect, right? That's about it, everything I have to say. So I hope that this is helpful. I'm going to do a proper sign off, but keep that little memento box, some precious little container that's meaningful to you and your life and the experiences you've been through, and use it as a trigger to find that special enchanting place at our piano with this wonderful literature for the instrument. And just a quick word about what I'm doing with my foot on the pedal. I forgot to mention that in the other part of the video. And you see me changing my right pedal a lot in this piece, sometimes per 16th note. It's very natural for me, and my foot just seems to kind of know what it's doing. But as best I can describe to you, I'm changing it not only with the harmony changes, as you're supposed to do, and staggered pedal, so the finger goes down and then the foot, like this staggered pedal, which is traditional common sense pedaling. But I'm also, beyond that, I'm frequently pedaling individual notes, 16th notes even sometimes, and I'm making special effort to let long notes pop or sing or like blossom, to let the tone of a long note blossom before I put the pedal down. So there's a little bit of a delay. That's why I'm going deep into the key. Also, my pedal changes, for the most part, unless it's a more full, louder passage, are just maybe a quarter of the way down or less. They're just very shallow pedal changes, and I'm bringing the pedal all the way up most of the time, but sometimes I'm bringing it up slowly to blend the tone. And remember, I'm doing finger pedaling as well. So this is all to create warmth and really pleasing sounds to the ear. And those tied notes, which, as we said, create a dissonance when the long note enters at the end of the tie, those I'm also listening for particular clarity. And as best I can describe, I'm changing the pedal for each of those so that it's not muddy or underwater sounding, right? So there's a lot going on with my foot. I'm not doing anything special with the soft pedal there. This is really a focus in careful finger and foot pedaling. And on that note, I'm going to wrap this tutorial up. I hope it was helpful. Happy practicing to you. Stay well, stay safe, and we'll see you again soon for more explorations of Bach's music. Take care. Bye-bye.